Boo doo doo. All right. Doo doo doo. We're going live now. Boo doo doo. Doo doo doo. Boo doo doo. All right, my name is Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, and welcome to our Roll of Tripper content channel. If you are watching live right now in the chat, let me know that you can hear me for sure, and that I'm not just seeing lines bounce on my side for no reason in the chat. I really appreciate it. That said, we are here for another Prestige class. Prestige class is when I sit down with a creator whose work I admire and talk to them about their process, what got them into games, and what they're working on right now. Today we are joined by Alex from Blackoath, who I'm super excited to have on. Alex has been incredibly generous in helping me work with some of the different creators he's collaborated with in the past, and I'm super excited to sit down and talk to him today. So Alex, if you want to tell people who you are, what you do, and where they can find you online.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's been a long time coming.
Thanks for letting people perceive you in the flesh. I know that's something you don't do very often, so I'm super excited.
It's not really, I don't really avoid it, I guess, but I don't know. Well, in any case, yeah, well, I'm Alex from Blackoath, and I specialize on solo RPGs with quite strong old school sensibilities, and I don't know, that's basically it. most people know me through my work with Exalted Funeral, I suppose, with Disciples of Blood and Shadow and Seekers Beyond the Shroud. And now I'm here to mostly talk about my latest project, which is Across 1,000 Dead Worlds, and I'm super excited about it. It's going great. It's right now on Kickstarter, and yeah, it's going to be fun.
Awesome. And there's a link right below Alex, but I'll also drop it in the chat in just a little bit. That'll take you right to the campaign page for that. I'm super excited about it. Alex and I were talking about this the other day. It does feel a little bit like 2022 might be the year of the space RPG. We're seeing a lot of really cool space RPG content. In the last year, we had Mothership come out for first edition really strong. We've got Hull Breach right now. Through the Void is funding for us. You've got Across 1,000 Dead Worlds up, and I know there's some other folks who are working on really cool space games also. So I'm loving that we're finally seeing more and more stuff coming out within that. I want to hear, I always like to start with, somebody said, like, this is the cliche thing that everybody does. And I was like, but I think it's so important. I want to just hear, first and foremost, a little bit about how you got started in playing RPGs, right? So eventually people kind of start designing. But how did you get started playing?
Well, it was my first direct contact with RPGs. It must have been 1990. When I was just bored with my cousins, and they decided to take out this red box that said Dungeons and Dragons on it, and I remember the box. I remember being absolutely in love with it. I do not remember at all how I felt about the actual experience of playing it. I mean, it's completely blank. I was 10 years old back then. So that was my first direct experience with the world of RPGs. But then a couple of years later, in 1992, that's when I really got into playing. I mean, with a regular group. We started with MERP, with Middle Earth Role Playing, which was incredible. Of course, I was a big Tolkien fan. There wasn't that many fantasy options, big mainstream back then. Then from that, we jumped into Vampire, and then I started playing with other people, and then I got hardcore into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Roll Master, which was always and still is one of my favorite ones. Call of Cthulhu, I don't know, all the classics. Cult, that was one of my personal favorite ones, even though I think I managed to play like 2-3 sessions. I was obsessed with that game. Nobody wanted to play with me. But yeah, I mean, it was all the 90s, early and mid-90s classics. Dungeons and Dragons, Roll Masters, Star Wars. I don't know. The same stuff we all played, I suppose, back then.
Awesome. No, I love it. I think it's always like the lineage that somebody has kind of coming into RPGs oftentimes will say a lot about like their design process, especially like the first
definitely.
RPG we kind of fall in love with. So I love hearing like Cult was one for you. Like for me, like I played Dungeons and Dragons one time when I was 8 and grew up in the South with a mom who was afflicted by the satanic panic,
Yeah.
and was always like, no, the game store was out of books today. I don't know. I guess we can't get any. And so GURPS was the first game that I played extensively, and it tremendously impacts the way I think about design and play. Byron in the chat says nothing like being obsessed with a game that you that you never get to play, and so I love that. So you were playing a lot of different games. You kind of had that classic through, and I think I always am curious about this. Like depending on what part of the world people are from, because you're in Madrid, right? And so depending on what part of the world people are from, sometimes they have different RPG influences, and sometimes that country or that region doesn't have a big one. So is there an RPG that is like, was at some point kind of a Spanish movement in RPGs that came through that maybe not everybody else played?
I don't know. Honestly, I wasn't, and still I am not really connected to any Spanish scene. I suck at making local contacts. But one name that comes to mind, I mean, everyone who was playing RPGs, Call of Cthulhu. I mean, everyone. That was like the common denominator for everyone.
Right.
Everyone was into. You could be playing Dungeons and Dragons sometimes or MERP, whatever, but everybody was playing Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
And yeah, I played a lot of Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, and I know, like I said, I know some countries have them and some don't. So it's always one I like to ask when I'm talking to somebody who's not from here, because like U.S. and a lot of other places it's Dungeons and Dragons, but like Warhammer and Fighting Fantasy for the UK were hugely influential, and then influenced Warlock, which we can talk a little bit about your work. With the beautiful edition of Warlock that Blackoath made, maybe a little bit, and then for in Sweden, like Marcus, my co-designer on Down We Go, there was a Swedish RPG that was really strong. I can't remember the translated name.
Blackoath,
yeah, and then there's like in Poland there are RPGs that influences in Australia, but not every country has them. So that's what I'm always kind of interested for that. But yeah, if you're in the chat, I'd love to hear the game you were obsessed with that you never got to play or never get to play. Also too. So what shifted you over more into design? At what point did you think, hey, I want to sit down and make a game as part of that process?
Well, I guess as most game masters, I was always homebrewing stuff. Another game I was really obsessed with was Stormbringer. That one, that's really in my DNA, designer DNA, the setting. And I mean, I'm just a huge Elric and Corum fan. It's been always my go-to fantasy. So that special melancholy and darkness that setting has. So yeah, I was a crazy amount of homebrew stuff for that game. I mean, I have folders and folders full of maps and I don't know, a lot of stuff. So naturally that evolved into creating, I mean, typical GM path. You start from a setting, you will do a lot of homebrew. And then fast forward a couple of decades and I ended up without any regular group to play with, and I discovered the world of solo RPGs, and I said, oh, this is very cool, but there's almost nothing, so I'm going to make my own. And that's it. I just sat down, wrote Disciples of Bone and Shadow in like 3 months. I mean, it was the first edition, a very basic one. That one, yeah, it was really fast, and that's it. I sent it to, I saw Matt was starting with Exalted Funeral. I saw he released Witch Hunter from Luca Reyes, and I sent it to him, and yeah, he loved it, and well, the rest is history.
I love it. For people who aren't familiar with Disciples of Bone and Shadow, tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, so it's a kind of sword and sorcery setting. It's strongly influenced, but not consciously, by Dark Sun. It's one of those things that I loved Dark Sun back in the days. I played it a lot in the 90s. But like it really disappeared from my conscious for decades. I mean, I didn't think about it at all. I lost the books. I mean, I don't know. Well, I bought them again recently, but yeah, I really didn't have access to them. And I just decided to create this world where there's the planet is one of these, what they call the eyeball planet. You know, it's how you call it right now. Sorry, the word slipped my mind. Well, it's always facing the same side is always facing the sun. Yeah. So tidally locked. Yes, sir. So there's a very narrow strip of land that is inhabitable. So after a great cataclysm that caused the planet to end up in that state, civilization is gone. You have these tyrants living in their fortresses. That's the really dark sun aspect of it, and it's quite a primitive and brutal world. It's typical sword and sorcery setting. A lot of corruption, magic corrupts. Everybody's piece of crap. I mean, there's no good guys. So yeah, that's the setting, and it's mostly focused towards solo playing. But you can play it in I know a lot of people who play it co-op. You can even play with a GM. It's very easy to GM a game like that. So yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, like you mentioned, like that you discovered solo games, and I think for anybody who plays solo games regularly, who designs in solo games, they're very kind of familiar with them. But there are so many people who I talk to or who will come, into the chat or who I'll have a conversation with who are like, I just don't know what solo games are, or how you do them, or why somebody would want to, because for a lot of people there's a communal attraction to that. I have a kid who every time I give them a solo game, they like eat it up and they can't wait to play it. And if there's a co-op or connected path mode, they're like, let's play together. And so but they love that kind of solo journaling experience or that solo game experience. What do you think for you was most attractive about that?
The fact that I could play alone. That's it. Because I was desperate to play some RPGs, and well, I have a lot of games I wanted to play. I couldn't because I didn't have a group. Fortunately, now I have one regular one, and I just wanted to play. So I started investigating. I found out about Mythic, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's basically a toolkit or rule set that you adapt to. It's system neutral, so you can adapt it to any game you want. It just has this neutral tables, which are called oracles, and they just emulate a game master. So instead of asking a game master or being surprised by the story that the game master is telling you, you use those tools in those tables to create the story. It's all randomly, but it all clicks in your head. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it was out of necessity. It's a very cool experience. It's completely different from playing with a group. I love them both for what they are in their own. I mean, they each have their own special, and I don't know. It's as a solo player, it's very interesting the way you surprise yourself. It's like wow. I mean, nobody's guiding me towards this direction. The connections you made, it's amazing when you get one thing from one side and another one from another side, and then suddenly it all clicks in your head, and it's like, oh wow, so the story is going in this way. I mean, you really surprise yourself.
Right.
At least in the type of games I usually play. Of course, you then have you have a game book, which like Fighting Fantasy or a Lone Wolf, or then you have the oh man, 1,000-year-old vampire how storytelling, that kind of narrative style, which is different from what I usually create or play. Like,
we just started playtesting a couple of weeks ago the Down We Go solo rules, and it was really interesting. We had some people who are very used to solo play.
I'm excited to see them.
I can shoot them over to you afterward, and I'll shoot you the solo pack. Sure. I'd love any insight you have. We used an Oracle system based on Chris McDowell's Ask the Stars piece. We reworked it. We talked to Chris. We made sure we had Chris's permission first, and we graciously extended it. It's still the core rules for Down We Go, but we really liked that Oracle system and some of the evocative nature of it.
Yeah,
it was really funny. When people who people who had never played a solo game before, they were like, I kind of get how to use the yes, like the hard no, no, yes, hard yes.
Maybe.
But they were like, when it came to like the more abstract Oracle pieces, because, you know, like there's images in there. So it's like we have like the teeth and the alchemist, and we have like a couple words about what they could represent, but a lot of them are like, I don't know how to do that. And we're like, it's just a prompt. You just make stuff up. And like some of them are like going buck wild, and it's really cool to see like these amazingly detailed things that they're surprising themselves with, and other people and like you know and are coming out of the narrative, and other people are like, I don't know what to do. And so we're trying to bridge that gap and explaining like, one, you're probably not doing it wrong. Like you just play and have fun.
No, there's no way of doing it wrong. You just, as long as it works for you and the story moves forward, it doesn't matter how you get there.
Right.
As long as you're having fun.
Yeah. And so, but it's always cool to see what different people do, especially with Oracle concepts, to help really kind of give some vibrancy and give some tools to that. And we've got our first kind of solo actual plays coming to the channel over the next little bit. And I'm really excited to see someone who has a heart for that culture, Armanda, who's going to be doing those, kind of dive into that and be able to really explore that and explain it to people. Because I think a lot of people don't know what it's like, so they don't know what to do. It's like the first time you sit down at the table to roll dice, or even like the first time you play some games like Troika, and you're not quite sure how you lean into it, and all you have to do is lean, and you'll be fine. So,
the key is always having a good setup. Once you have that initial, just some lead, something. Okay, this is the opening scene,
right?
And then from there, things evolve naturally. It just story takes its own direction.
Yeah. So, no, and you guys have done, and so like with Disciples of Bone and Shadow, you did the basic edition, and did you do the Conquered Sun edition right away, or did that come later?
Yeah. So first, it was a bit of a mess, everything with Disciples. We were both Matt and I were testing things. So the first edition we did, it was just 100 pages, very basic. Man, it's been so long, I don't even remember. I think the first edition was even D20 based. So it was quite. It was basically just a glorified dungeon crawler,
right?
And with a bit of hex crawling. That's it. Then we released an expansion. It was called the Narrative Playbook, which really turned the game into an actual RPG, and it added all the proper GM emulation tools, a proper setting. I don't know. I mean, it was only the expansion alone was hundreds of pages, so it was like 2-3 times larger than the core book. And also, I changed the rule set to D100, which is close to my heart because of Rollmaster and Call of Cthulhu and Stormbringer. So I'm a big D100 fan. So, and then I decided that. Well, I realized that the expansion wasn't really an expansion. It was like core gameplay that some people were missing out. So it was really necessary to include it in with the basic core rules. So we just put them together into the Conquered Sun edition. I released a few copies myself. It was just 100 collector's edition. 100 copies, a bit more nice. I think I sent you a copy, didn't
you? Do I have? I actually have. I think I have both editions, and so but I have the Conquered Sun edition for sure.
So I first released that nicely done edition, and then Matt released the paperback, the softcover edition. So I don't know, it's already second or third printing of that one.
That's awesome.
It's cool.
It is such a great, expansive, amazing world to play around with. If you haven't checked it out, if you're looking at a solo game that I think provides a lot of solo games that we see, and this is great. Like this is not a critique. They're very brief. They're very small. They're very short. There's so much in Disciples of Bone and Shadow, and I think that ability to go from solo to group play is an area that I really love. Like, I think when we see things that are focused on, you can do this solo, you can do this with a group, it means that everybody's playing on a more equitable foot. The GM comes in and they don't have as much pressure on them to run the game because we're all playing this game cooperatively together. And I love seeing that as more of a design thread. And I really feel like Disciples of Bone and Shadow was one of the first books that I saw that did that really consistently. Coming out of some of the later OSR movement, as we were starting to see things like Sword Dream and more emergent narrative elements become a practical part of what people really wanted from a table experience. And I think solo games do that so well that it's really great when we see that kind of matriculate back into normal play. And Disciples of Bone and Shadow just kills it as far as that go. And then you did that, but you also, and I know it's not your game, but you did this beautiful edition of Warlock. That Blackoath put out. It's just kind of this. If you aren't familiar with it, this is one that is influenced by kind of the fighting fantasy series. It's a lot of. We've interviewed the creator for that. It's basically all the non-horrid, dehumanizing things about Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay put into a cleaner system with a lot of really solid influences. And it's I think one of the best examples of what the British OSR kind of brings out. But what made you want to kind of partner on that project and kind of produce this beautiful tome for that?
That I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was I saw it on well, of course, like a lot of things, I discovered it on the Exalted Funeral Discord server, and which is terrible for my wallet. So many good things shared there all the time. So yeah, I discovered there, and I saw that it was only available through RPG. And while I mean a print-on-demand book, it's fine, but it's not, you can't compare it to an actual released offset book. So yeah, I thought it was a pity. It's such a great game, and so full of charm. And I mean, you can see the creator Greg he really loved working on that book, and he loves. I mean, he doesn't stop. He's just constantly releasing.
He's always got new stuff coming out for it too. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's getting hard to. I mean, I have everything because I'm a hardcore fan of the game. Yeah, sometimes it's like, oh man. I mean, I know you're going to release a new book next month, so I'll just wait a month instead of ordering each month a new book from him. I just wait a couple of months and order them at once. So yeah, basically the thing is that I love the game so much. I said, okay, this needs to be properly. This deserves an actual edition. So I contacted him. He liked the idea, and yeah, we went forward. Another thing also is that I realized, and I partially agree. A lot of people didn't like the font for starters and the layout in general. There's been a lot of criticism about the font. So yeah, one of the first things I wanted to do is complete a new layout, pick a bit better looking font, get a lot more of artwork, because everything's okay.
I was seeing if I could just grab it real quick from behind me. Okay. But no, yeah, it is such a gorgeous final project, and it's one of those things that I do like. I love the aesthetic of the stuff that he does, but the version y'all did is such just a beautiful, easy to read, like pleasant, it's like and just gorgeous tome to have on the shelf. And so I was trying to grab it real quick, but it's the slip cover is there, but apparently I pulled it out of the slip cover and shelved it somewhere else. But no, that's awesome. And so you've been doing a lot of work in like both your own design, working with other creators to take their projects you love, and kind of elevate the presentation of them. And now we're looking at, you've had a couple other pieces, but now we're also looking at Across the Dead Worlds, which I'm going to pop up on the screen next to us. The Kickstarter page, which I dropped a link to in the chat if you're watching later, is in the description. But again, tell us a little bit about Across 1,000 Dead Worlds.
So I've been obsessed with a book by Frederick Paul called Gateway. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's kind of niche, which is really surprising because it's absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favorite, not only science fiction books, but all-time favorite books. I absolutely love it. And I always thought, man, this will be a great, great game. And I was kind of always expecting somebody will do it because Frederick Paul, he's a known author. That series of books, as far as I know, is one of its most successful ones. And but still, I never saw it. I never saw anything like it. So I said, yeah, just I'm going to do it myself because the setting is perfect. So it's across 1,000 worlds is basically taking Gateway, which I'll get into it now. Getting the Gateway with a touch of Alien and maybe a little bit of Paranoia, the RPG. So the setting is humanity. Well, Earth is on the brink of collapsing, or it has collapsed already. The ocean levels have risen. The setting is like 100 years from now, so early 22nd century, something like that, more or less. And the asteroid mining is a thing that you have all the big corporations mining asteroids, and there's this little asteroid that one of the smallest mining companies gets assigned. They buy the rights of exploitation. The thing is that inside that asteroid, they find hundreds and hundreds of alien ships. The problem with those ships is that they are so advanced and so weird to comprehend for the human mind that they only manage to turn it on and select one of the hundreds of different possible destinations, and well, that's it. I mean, there's no piloting them. So your role as a player is you basically volunteer for fame and profit to be one of those deep divers, as they are called, to hop into one of these ships with alone or with your crew. You can go. The ships come in three. Three models. You have the single person, three crew members, or five. So it's 1, 3, 5, and you just hop onto it, and it's alea jacta. It's total whatever. Sometimes you arrive to an alien site, and if you're lucky, you can just loot the place. Basically, you grab everything that you can, and you think it's going to be worth anything, and bring it back to current station. Sometimes you arrive to a planet. Other times, if you're very, very unlucky, you arrive into a black hole and you don't return. I mean, it's that kind of thing. The cool thing also is that you don't know how long you're going to take. The journey
Right.
to your supposed destination is going to take. You really don't know. So you have to plan in advance your supplies, your oxygen, rations, everything. You have to kind of guesstimate, okay, I think with 2-3 weeks of supplies, we should be fine. And usually that's the case, but sometimes you are unlucky. Maybe you arrive there with enough supplies to get there, but not enough supplies to come back if it's the full crew. So that's when things get a bit touchy and a bit paranoia with players potentially, or if you're playing alone, other NPCs, because you can play alone with NPCs or play purely by yourself with a single character. So that's when things get a bit stressful, and there's starting to be a bit more of social and group dynamics. But basically, that's it. I mean, you hop into these ships that you don't know where they're going to. You grab everything you can, come back, and get some cash and experience for it.
I love it. I'm so excited about it. I'm excited about it for a number of reasons. I'm going to talk to a teenager real quick. Hold on. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, bye. I'm a cool dad, so apparently one of my teenagers gave my contact information out. No, there's so many things I love about it, and again, I think it's even some of the things we talked about with Disciple of Bone and Shadow, some of the things that are near and dear to the things that I love in design right now. We've got that 1 to 5 player range, right? So this is something you can play solo and GM, so you can put a GM in there. You can play cooperatively. Like, it's got that same type of flexibility that's kind of a hallmark of a lot of the ways that you design, but things I just love. We also talked about, like, of course, and this is just total craft stuff, but it's stuff I just go nerdy over. Like, you've got the deluxe Murgo edition also too, which is going to be this big beautiful book on top of it already being a super beautiful book coming in a slipcase and other stuff like that. So it's absolutely gorgeous. But is it also, is we're looking at a D100 system here? How does the play work?
No, actually here, I mean, initially it was a D100 system, yeah, definitely. But then I realized that because the way combat worked, it was better to switch to D20. But it's not like it's not the typical OSR or Dungeons and Dragons D20 system. It's very simple. The core system, just roll a D20, add your attribute or skill, and if the result is higher than or equal to 20, that's the success. That's it.
Awesome.
That's a core. On top of that, of course, there's a lot of different layers. Combat gets different because it's tactical combat,
right?
Which was tricky. I mean, I needed time to come to the idea of, or embracing the idea of going fully tactical, because initially the combat wasn't tactical, but the rules were really screaming, make this tactical, make this more closer to a skirmish game. And the reason why is because I was really gunning for that Necromunda feeling of you don't have HP, for example, you don't have health points, hit points, whatever. You have wounds. You have your character has 3 wounds, maximum 3 wounds. So, and then your character can get knocked down, and you have a stamina, which is kind of action points each turn. You have a different possibilities, and I don't know, you have a lot of different options. And one of the reasons why I went that way is that as a solo player, combat can get a bit boring.
Yeah,
because it can be just I roll to attack, I roll to defend. I mean, it's just roll. There's basically no decision making when you're playing alone in a combat, so it gets boring, can get boring. So I decided to spice things up a little bit, and that's how I ended up with tactical combat. You actually need there's a combat grid. You need tokens or minutes, whatever you want. And it's much more fun like this.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. I when I was looking through the system earlier, you sent me kind of the preview version of it. I always look at character sheets first because I love what character sheets tell us about a system. And I think the character sheet has a lot of things that I really love, and I haven't made it all the way through reading everything. But there are so many different kind of familiar pieces here, along with completely new things that I'm not used to, but it creates this really great sense of both, all right, I know what some of these things are and I can immediately wrap my mind around them. And there's other pieces that I'm like, I want to know more about how this. So that was my thing, like stamina, trauma, luck, like, and you just mentioned kind of those give you tactical options, the stress level, the obsessions, the negative traits. But it starts off with kind of the 6 classic stats of an RPG, right? Like that immediately, I think, to a lot of people goes, okay, I know what governs at least some of the basics of a character. The skills are all very, except for the top skill for the Arside technology. Like, I can imagine that's alien technology kind of right off the bat, but like everything else is totally evocative. You've also got talents there, which, we don't know anything about initially, the wounds and injuries pieces, but the emotional state then like kind of catches my eye and like, okay, like this is something we're tracking. And like, I think when we see things like stress and other things like that, especially with space games, we kind of gravitate towards like thinking about Mothership and like the panic system and other things like that. But this emotional state and kind of this swing line of pleased through hopeless as another layer on top of that provides a little bit more nuance, what that does to skills. But then I went down, it's got on the next sheet of paper, this loadout, like, so through the void, inventory is very simple, but we did a loadout system because it's something I love from video games. I like the way Mothership does it kind of, but I really like the idea of like, I love the human anatomy of like, here's the thing you have in this hand. It's so good. It's so good. And then you got your backpack also too, right? So like, I love that vibe. Again, something I can immediately grab onto, but then I go to the bottom and you've got these like statements that are just so good for this type of play. When you're feeling confident, when you're feeling shy, when you're feeling bored, when you're feeling happy, when you're feeling frustrated, these things, they're just quick questions that are putting you right into, this is the way your character thinks and reacts. And you could predefine those, or you can take them as they come in play, I'm sure, or depending on how you're playing. But it's just such a great mode. And then you slide over and you've got a little bit more of the actual character's bio and other pieces under the personality section. This fusion of really solid tactical elements and familiar pieces and unfamiliar pieces and narrative components is very, very rare in an RPG to just see on a character sheet and to not be overwhelmed. It's one sheet front and back. If you wanted to condense the information as much as possible, you could easily fit it all on one sheet. But you've taken the space to give it a really solid visual layout also too, and give everything the space you need. I just like like, this is the type of character sheet that it makes me immediately want to play. Vi's in the chat talking about Vi loves Bones and Shadows, also loves Mario and Splinters, but just said, I'm super impressed. I'm super biased toward the body outline, big Castle of the Wind vibes. 100%. Like, there's so many small pieces on here that matter, that give you a lot that you can do with the sheet. And I really, like I said, it's just tremendous, the amount of things that you can fit in there. Five says, hi, Alex. So anyways, like I said, I'm very thrilled, and I want to know a little bit more though. Like you mentioned, and you mentioned right before, like somebody was like, rolling over 20, that seems hard. And the reality is, like, you designed this system. It's not the first system you've designed. So you mentioned adding stats and skills. So what does it look like when you make a roll? Just to give people a sense, because that is, I think when we say D20, people assume it's going to be automatically, for no good reason. It's going to be roll a D20, add a stat. That stat's going to be between 1, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 0, maybe negative, and then you're going to go up, which I'm assuming is not how Across 1,000 Dead Worlds work. We don't have to make a whole character, but tell me just a little bit about the roll mechanics, just because I think having that 20 target number is so cool, because it, again, takes something familiar, the D20, and then says, yeah, but we're going to use it in a totally different way.
Yeah. No, the usual score for your stats, it's the average it's 10, I would say 10, 12, and it can go up to a maximum of 18, which is a lot.
Right.
Considering the target number is usually 20. I mean, if you have an 18, you just need to roll a 2. So it's, yeah. But yeah, a character will start with an average of, I mean, it's up to the person, because it's all point based. You distribute, you have 60 points for your attributes and then 70 for the skills, if I don't remember. Yeah, that's it. And so yeah, the average it's 10 per attribute. So I mean, but you basically have a 50% success rate on normal circumstances. Of course, you then have modifiers to the roll depending on the circumstances.
Right, but that, I mean, yeah, you start with a 50-50 chance. It's not
basically. I mean, depending on, you always have min maxers. Actually, I had to tweak during the play test, because there was this guy who basically put 1 on, I don't know. He made himself immune to being knocked down. So it was like, okay, you can't start the character with 18 Constitution. You're breaking the game from the start. And I have difficulties thinking on that min-maxing way. I always think, like, who's going to do that? I mean, you're most of the people are going to be playing this alone. Why do you want to, like, beat yourself?
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know. But yeah, people do that. So I'm grateful for that guy who pointed it out.
I mean, it's good to have game breakers show up and try to break the game.
No,
and you're going to either use a stat or one of your skills. It's either one or the other. So which lets you say, like, hey, your character may not be super smart, but they still also may be very good at medical aid. And so if you're a medic who isn't the brightest but still is better at medic than you are at just, intelligence or whatever, or you need a specific skill for a specific situation, it's right here, and I love that. Byron Codes in the chat says, does the difficulty of a task ever affect the check? So climbing an 8-foot fence versus climbing a 30-foot cliff. So you mentioned modifiers in there. This is nittier grittier than we get, but when I saw this character sheet, I just wanted to talk about it because I do love kind of diving into it. So how to modify? What's the kind of modifier range you typically see?
Damn, you caught me completely. I don't know right now.
That's fine. Stick it in the back of your head. We'll come back to it.
I haven't checked. I mean, I can tell you a second. It's the table. I have it right here. I think it was the average was like -2, -5, something like that. So it's nothing enormous, but yeah, I think it was minus from the zero is the average, of course. Then depending on the difficulty, easier or difficult, it was going from -2, -5, and I think that's it. Awesome. So -2, -5, or +2, +5. Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, I'm doing a little scroll through of just a preview document that you sent me. This is not final layout. This is kind of everything tossed into some very simple pieces, but it's already very good looking. The language is clear, easy to read. The layout's already phenomenal. Even at the just this being the very beginning of where y'all are going to go with it. Clear explanation of how things work, what talents do, other things like that. I just want people to get a sense of how well written the game is going to be, even from where it's at right now. The other thing I want to know a little bit about the team, so we can brag on Vi, who is in the chat. But I also want to know a little bit more about the toolkit. Let's talk about the team first. So you've got a bunch of great people who have come in to work with you on this. Talk to me a little bit about some of the different voices you've pulled into this project.
Yeah, so we have. First person I decided to work with was Phil, which is a newcomer to the RPG scene, at least from the design aspect of things, because he's been playing for like all of us decades. So yeah, he's the person behind Signum Nox, and he's just released his first game, which is called Sand and Ether. LF OSR released it. It's a small arena combat, really cool, really clever game. It's a blast. It's really cool. By the way, he's going to add solo rules too, so I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, he's just incredible with the design, and most people probably know him because he's the one who did the Knave redesign that it's been shared all over. I mean, it was also released by LF OSR, and it looks amazing. So yeah, he's incredible for anything visual. He's the one who's making this a success. Actually, I mean, without him, I know the campaign wouldn't have worked, and the game wouldn't. The character sheet that you like so much, it's all him. I just said, okay, here are the sections. Do whatever you want. I want the paper that I insisted. And he was like, okay, here. And I was like, this is perfect. So like that, everything. I mean, we have not only the character sheet, we have combat sheet. He's making sheets for everything because he's big on making a lot of game aids and player aids. And so he's constantly churning out more and more things for the players to have to make gameplay easier, aside from the incredible layout that he's working on. So yeah. And then we have LF OSR, Leo from LF OSR, who, since this was my first Kickstarter alone, I knew that he was very. He has a big experience with marketing and he knows his way around a good Kickstarter campaign. So I decided to bring him on board to help me set everything up, to help me with promotion, all this kind of stuff. And on top of that, he's also a very nice illustrator and excellent writer. So I decided to collaborate with him for one of the scenarios. He was one of the stretch goals. One of the first ones we unlocked, and he will be writing one of the scenarios for the game. Then we also have Vi, of course, who is just, well, I always need them. Vi has to be part of my team. I mean, We worked together in Seekers. We worked in Disciples. So I just need them. They need to. Yeah,
Is
they
one of my
need to be here.
favorite people to collab with or without permission.
Yeah, they're just amazing. So
you mentioned some of the other sheets, so I do want to show people because I am a big fan. I like whenever I think about what I want in my book, like I'm a big fan of never leave empty pages, and always give people planning tools and tools that you can hand out at the table to be able to do something better. And so, just like a couple quick tastes of that, we've got things like the creature index sheet that y'all made, which is, a place to record different, I'm guessing, creatures that you come across.
Yeah, because they're randomly generated. All the creatures are, so to keep track of them, you need to write everything, because you don't have the typical stat blocks. I mean, you do have for certain creatures, but most of the creatures you encounter are randomly generated. So you have to generate the stat block and the abilities and how they look. All that is done on the fly.
Yeah.
So
and then you've got this is probably my favorite one out of all of them, is the site expedition report, right? Yeah. So the ability to write up the different things that you find, to make notes on, to talk about encounters, which is great as both a planning tool for the GM, but also as just a group thing to put down in the middle of the table and just explore the world together. And so, like, again, things like this open up a different type of play.
And the thing is that's the site, the alien site report. Then he's also making a planet report sheet, which has another kind of, it's a whole other world. Then he's making the NPC sheets. I mean, he's just keeps churning these out, and it's amazing. It's, personally, I find it super useful. So
yeah, I think people oftentimes underestimate it. It's something that I will tell people to do a whole lot, like put planning sheets in, especially for new GMs. It's one of, like, you have tons of GMs who will just like go, oh, okay, great, right? That's fine. You'll have players who will find those and really enjoy using them for their own notes, though. And also for a new GM, especially, or if you're wanting them to be able to kind of create their own emergent world, then you need to give them the tools to be able to track and care for and remember the different things that they have done, and then kind of be able to even reward some of that in play. And so I love stuff like this. It's 100%. My GM, Byron says, woohoo, TPS reports. And so 100%. You only get XP if you fill out your TPS reports. And I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday to do it. If you don't die in the dark void of space. So we mentioned a couple people. Anybody else we want to mention from the team?
Yeah, definitely. But then we have Glenn Seal, who's making, he's any award winner for his amazing maps. He's just, I used him. I worked with him several times. I used him. That sounds so bad. I worked with him several times for maps and other stuff, and he's a pleasure to work with. He's amazing, very fast. I mean, he's an amazing person, extremely helpful always. It's a pleasure to work with him, and so he's making the battle maps we are including with the game. And of course, last but not least, we have Don Stroud, who's also writing one of his scenarios. He was another stretch goal which we unlocked, so he's also going to write another scenario, which is going to be very well. I'm familiar. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Don Stroud's work, but his kind of special, gloomy, creepy stuff. His DCC supplements are among the best things I own. I mean, it's just, all his work is incredible.
Love it.
So I'm very, very happy to have him on board also.
Awesome.
And then for illustrations, we have a couple of mostly unknown artists. We have Vale, who coincidentally worked on, I can't remember right now, he worked on a Mothership zine, which I didn't know. I mean, it was very funny because I started working with him, and then I got this Mothership zine, and I was thinking, all this art looks familiar, and then I checked the credits. Oh, it's Phil. So it was like, okay, now I understand why he has this already, because it was very easy for him to snap into the visual language of sci-fi. It was like instantly he understood what I wanted, and it's like, okay, this guy's perfect. It's a perfect match.
He did Dying Hard on Hard Light Station,
Yeah,
which
sorry. Yes,
which
that's
is I need to pop this image up bigger. Hold on.
Yeah.
Is potentially one of my favorite mothership visually are things like ever produced, and a big part of it is their ability to think outside of the limits of the page. Right, a lot of artists will think about what they're doing on the page very well, but they do such a phenomenal job, especially like this image right here, of looking at things encroaching and coming out of the page. The way things it's very centered, but there's a lot of consideration given to what's not happening on the page. Also, just really tremendously striking tones. Such a phenomenal artist, and I didn't recognize the name initially, but as soon as you started talking about it, I was like, I know which one this is. And so it's such a good look.
Yeah, and then we have a small illustrator. Well, he's mostly known for doing small. It's called Likosor. He does a lot of animation, 3D and 2D videos, and he's from Ukraine. And yeah, I think this is his first project with RPGs, but he's also very, very easy to work with, very fast, very. Just he gets it instantly. What I need, he gets it instantly. So yeah, it's a good thing. I'm very happy.
I'm thrilled. I have two more questions for our time together. You mentioned the toolkit. One of the things that when I was reading through it, I loved, and it's got a very Traveler vibe to it. Traveler, you can die in character creation, and this one, you could randomly generate. Like you could finish creating your characters, hop in your ship, and then pop up in the middle of a black hole and die. And I love that.
I just had to add that because I mean, after all, you're boarding ships that have been in place for hundreds of thousands of years. Most of the destinations are not going to be like they were almost a million years ago. So yeah, sometimes you are unlucky and you arrive to a place where.
So how likely is it that I pop up in the middle of a sun or a black hole when I generate a character?
Initially it was 20%. So, but yeah, that was the first time doing playtesting. They said, no, this is not working. I mean, I just made a character and I died. I mean, it happened too much. So I reduced it to 5%. And I'm considering reducing it to 1-2% because I mean, I don't know. I'll have to, it's not going to go back to. It's not going to evolve.
It's not going to go up, but it may go down.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely staying there, and it will be between 1 and 5% chances. So yeah, it's a possibility. Now, it shouldn't happen all the time, but yeah.
But it sounds like
it's a funny way of dying.
It sounds like everything is really geared around this procedural generation process of allowing everybody at the table to be surprised by what's happening. And letting if there's a GM, letting them step into the position of arbiter more so than world builder, which I love. I love that exploration process together. And I love games that include toolkits. Like tomorrow morning, we're sitting down with Sam Sorensen and Luca and Zedek and Brian Yaksha and Charlie Ferguson Avery, who are all people I love because they make locations, but their locations function like toolkits. And it's just talking about like creating spaces that allow adventure to arise is just the whole theme of the conversation of the panel. Come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time because everybody's all over the world and we needed to find a time that worked for that conversation, or catch it later. But I love really interesting. I love seeing that in this. Like it's something that I think about all the time now because those have become some of my favorite places to play around with. Let's grab a system, let's grab a toolkit, or let's grab a system that also has a rich toolkit in it, and let's just start playing. Let's explore this space together. For me, those are where the best adventures come up. And I got to spend the night thinking a lot about all the questions limiting down the questions I want to ask tomorrow, but I love seeing it in this. Last question is, we all know that on the front of every space game, there's at least one skeleton in a spacesuit. So my question is, of the two people on the mock-up of this, which one is a skeleton, or are they both skeletons?
It's funny that you mention that because I do have another illustration which is a bunch of skeletons in space. So yeah, maybe
You
not
you
the
have to.
maybe not the cover one, but yeah, they
If it's
are
not
there.
on the front cover, some regions allow you to put it on the back cover, but you have to have a skeleton so people know that it's
Yeah,
dangerous space stuff.
yeah, you just have to. Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward. You guys are already well funded. You've been unlocking stretch goals. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I can't wait to get my hand on it. I want to encourage people, if it's in your budget, one of the things that Blackoath Entertainment does best is not just making amazing games, which they do, but it's making amazing games that are incredibly well packaged. So if you can get the Murgo edition, it's only going to be available in the Kickstarter. I'm not just trying to upsell you. I think it's the level to back at. I think you're going to be happy no matter what. But with some of the extra stuff that comes in it, the extra battle maps, the pre-printed elements, plus the slipcover, I think you're going to be tremendously happy. And I've never been let down by the physical presentation of a Blackoath project, and I think it's always worth investing extra in it. So just FYI. Windwraith says, thanks for highlighting this. It was completely off my radar. Yeah, I love the work Blackoath does. And so, Alex, I've really loved having you on today. If people want to follow the campaign, again, there's a link down below us they can go to. I'm going to drop it into the chat again also, too. So you can go right there as soon as we're done here or open it in a new window. What did I do? 1,000 KS. But yeah, I am so excited as I've read through it, as I started looking at the character sheet, as I've looked at the different pieces, I get more and more excited. I can't wait. Hopefully as when it's coming out, it's a little bit closer to production. Maybe we can get you and Vi or a couple of the team members to come back on and play with us. As it's kind of going out to the world. I would absolutely love
that would be very cool.
To go into a black hole together right after.
Beautiful way of starting.
With that said, like I said, we've got a bunch of stuff happening this weekend here on the channel that I want to shout out. One is that panel tomorrow, which I have a graphic for, but apparently I didn't upload it into my upcoming stream slab. Tomorrow morning, we're talking about where to go and what to do there with a panel of 5 people who create, I think, some of the best locations that give rise to adventure in the RPG scene right now. So come back in the morning for that or catch the video on demand later. But it's a community conversation, meaning that we really set it up as just a time for people who kind of create in a similar space or think about something a whole lot to be able to talk to each other, to be able to talk to you, for me to be able to ask them questions, and to have a conversation with the community. So if you have questions about that, I'll tweet out a link probably later tonight for people to go ahead and add them to. But you can join us live tomorrow to get your questions asked also. That's going to be at 9 a.m. Eastern time because some of the people live on the other side of the world, and it's 9 to 11 p.m. their time, so that's what works. The other thing that we've got coming up tomorrow is Funeral Party with Stella Joy Condry. If you love amazing Mothership pamphlet adventures, Stella has been putting out some absolutely phenomenal stuff lately, and so Jarrett Crater from Exalted Funeral and I are going to be summoning her ghost from beyond the grave in the future, because she's alive now, but we want to talk to her 100 years from now when she's dead. And so we're going to summon her back for that. We're also going to make the biggest announcement we have ever made on a funeral party tomorrow on that funeral party. So you should absolutely show up to it. There's something very cool we're going to be doing. You're going to have to show up tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern to find out what that is or catch the video on demand later. And then the other thing, if you want to support us, you can always go to Ko-fi.com, become a content champion. But would be most helpful right now is if you went to ttrpg.link.hull/TTV, and I'll drop that link in the chat also too. And if you really like space games and you like emergent narrative and you like players and GMs being able to be surprised together, check out Through the Void, which is our minimalist space RPG right now. We're funding the beta version. We're closing in. We're just like $20 from $1,000, which will let us unlock another amazing dungeon by Marcus Linderum. And then we're going to be working on our first mission for that, which is going to be Lucas Rollum and Gnarled Monster working together to create a standalone mission for the system. All that stuff is going to go into a beta pack that we'll kick out for the next few months to let people play, get feedback, and then we'll fund it for print as an 80-page full game on GameFound later on this year. So go check that out. If you appreciated this stream, want to help support us, that's the best way to do it right now. And then Saturday morning, we are going to be playing 9 Lives to Valhalla, which the age of man is over and the age of beasts has comes. We play as cats with 9 lives, being led by death into glory. It is a feline death metal adventure from Gym Room Games. It's coming out as part of Zemo, which is Zine Month. All next month, there's a ton of great small RPGs that are funny. So that's all stuff coming up on the stream. But before you do any of that, go to ttrpg.link/1000ks. Check out the project. Back it if you haven't. And if you haven't ever checked out any of Alex's work, please do that over at Blackoath Entertainment. There's links to that on the Kickstarter. Also, Alex, if people want to find you on social media, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, so I guess it will be my personal Twitter account, which is @IamTheHorned1, and Facebook, which is Blackoath Entertainment. Awesome. And well, Instagram, I suppose. It's just I'm very bad at updating.
Then don't send them there. Those are great. Twitter is great. Wherever is best for you is great.
Blackoath Entertainment. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then I have my personal Twitter account. So,
awesome. If you were just joining us, we were just finishing up. We were talking for our Prestige class today with Alex. We're talking a little bit about the design mindset that goes into a lot of this. The last thing I want to say is I'm a big fan right now, especially of bigger projects that bring more people to the table. I love, Alex, that you're bringing in completely new voices. Like you mentioned, you're bringing in people you've collaborated with for a long time. You're bringing in new people who you want to collaborate with. Seeing people helm projects that bring in a lot of different voices, it's a passion of ours. But I really feel like in the indie RPG space, especially right now, that's the pathway to success. And if you don't believe me, a lot of the projects that we see doing amazing things are projects that are really built collaboratively. It's not one person's voice. It's a group of people that are coming together. Alex has always been a champion of other indie creators, as well as creating amazing things himself. So again, thank you, Alex, for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And our tagline, which was created by someone in the chat, Vi Huntsman. This has been Prestige Class with Alex T from Black Oath Entertainment, and class is dismissed. And then Vi does this to go like, all right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Thanks.